So my PowerPoint wouldn't upload, so I'm just gonna video it and link it to YouTube. So here it is. My name is Krista Terranova, and this is my Project 2 presentation. I decided to do my presentation on the 18th and 19th century Angahiyans, and I ask you to excuse my pronunciation because I'm just going off of how it's spelled phonetically in the book, but I don't know if it's actually right, so just bear with me. Angahiyans are removable lace or muslin sleeves that were introduced in the early part of the 18th century and lasted in fashion up until about the 19th century, until they went out of style, and then did make a little bit of a revival in the 20th and now the 21st centuries. The paintings and pictures that you see here are a good representation of the 18th century Angahiyans. As it states, they were tight at the top and flared out at the bottom to give fullness and volume to the sleeve of a woman's dress. Angahiyans of the 18th century were typically buttoned to the inside of the dress. As you can see here on this picture, I've pointed a couple arrows to the buttonholes that are apparent there. So it's most likely that inside of the dress there were buttons that this would just attach to, but then you could remove it. Part of the reason why they wanted these pieces removable was so that they could wash them, since they did tend to get very grimy and get into food and other things, since they were most often very full and had several layers of fabric. So it did make it easier for them to clean. 19th century Angahiyans are a little bit different because they were full on top and gathered to a cuff at the bottom, as you can see here. They were created more to fit a pagoda sleeve, which became popular in the 19th century, which are like those sleeves that you see here where they were narrow at the shoulders but then became very full and large towards the elbow, but then stopped, leaving the arm exposed, hence the need for the Angahiyan to cover the rest of the arm. Most of these 19th century Angahiyans were either tied to the chemise, or they also would have a button closure, but not to the inside of the sleeve, but more to itself, just to keep a tight cuff around the arm so that it wouldn't slide down. The Angahiyans were also a status of wealth. One interesting thing about Angahiyans was that they were a symbol of wealth. So those on the left would be an Angahiyan of a wealthy person because of how many layers and the fullness that it added to the sleeve, whereas the painting on the right probably would have depicted a more humble Angahiyan, with it not being so full and being a lot more homely and probably made out of a muslin rather than a lace material. Although I couldn't find any pattern or instructions on exactly how they constructed Angahiyans of the 18th and 19th centuries, I did find the materials that were most likely to be used, and those were lace or muslin, any type of light cotton material, and usually they included some kind of embroidery, and of course the buttons as closures either to the dress or closures on itself. What I used was batiste, which is a soft white cotton, and I imagine they probably used something similar to it. And I used elastic to keep it on my arm as opposed to doing a button closure. I picked Angahiyans partly because I'm very much obsessed with the bell sleeve craze that's going on right now. So I do see bell sleeves as a modern version of an Angahiyan. As you can see in these photos, You have lots of different variations with different fullnesses and even layering the ruffles to give it a little bit more dimension. And this is my rendition of the engagement. So like I said, I used a light batiste fabric and elastic to keep it up on my arm. So here's just a couple of snapshots, and if you continue on to the next slide, you'll also see a couple more pictures of my version of it. And this is my bibliography showing some of the sources that I used in this presentation, and thank you very much for watching.